What you are about to read is both a confession and an apology. I don't know how much time I have, so I will keep this as short as I can. I was coming back home from work a few nights ago. It was dark and I was tired from my shift, when suddenly, a deer ran out in front of my truck. I locked my brakes, but couldn't stop in time. Feeling my heart pounding, I just sat in my truck, staring at the motionless deer laying in the middle of the road. I had never killed anything before, intentionally or accidentally. As much as I wanted to get home, take a shower, and go to bed, I couldn't just let it lay there. Someone could run it over, causing real damage to their undercarriage, or God forbid, they swerve to avoid it and end up falling over 100 feet into the river below, hitting dozens of trees on the way down. I couldn't let that be on my conscience, so I did what the good Lord Jesus would have done. I put on my emergency lights and got out of the truck to pull the carcass off the road. However, as I was doing this, I saw something move in the deer's lower gut. Seeing this made my heart sink because at the time I thought maybe the dead deer was going to give birth. While holding in a gag and pulling the body to get it off the road, whatever was in the deer crawled out of its backside, ran up the leg I was holding onto, and bit my hand. It was too fast and the night was too dark, so I have no idea what it could have been. Instinctively, I flung the creature off of me and heard it scamper away through the grass. Wonder what the hell just attacked me, I inspected the wound. The wound produced very little blood and looked no worse than what a cat would do if it placed a little too roughly. Since my heart was pounding out of my chest and I had most of the deer carcass off the road, I figured I had done my duty and it was time to head home. Soon as I got home, I barely had the energy to take off my clothes, so all hopes I had of taking a shower were lost, and as soon as my head hit the pillow, I was out like a light. The next morning I felt sluggish and cold. My teeth were chattering violently. It reminded me of a flu. However, my nose wasn't stuffed up and I wasn't congested. The wound on my hand was red, but not swollen. Still, I was worried and made a call to set up a doctor's appointment. However, after the exam, the doctor said he could find nothing wrong with me, but the blood test would take a few days before the results would come in. I am not the kind of person to tell someone how to do their job, especially if their job meant years of education and twice that many having their own practice. However, I made it clear that I strongly disagreed with what the doctor said. When I got home, my stomach was complaining. I ate shortly before getting off work the day before, so there was no reason for my stomach to complain as much as it was. I tried eating soup, but it tasted like fermenting compost. No joke, that's what it tasted like. When I checked the expiration date, I was surprised that it still had 8 months left before it was considered bad. At the time, I figured whatever was wrong with me was affecting my senses. My grandma said that 7-Up and ginger ale was as close to magic as it gets when it comes to being sick. But since I didn't have any in my house, I made a few calls and had it delivered. However, that too tasted bad. My stomach kept complaining. So in an attempt to silence it, I decided to make something that I could never resist. My mom's specialty, meatloaf. If nothing else, it was comfort food, and my favorite as a kid. Lo and behold, it tasted amazing. However, when I tried adding ketchup like I always did, I nearly gagged from the smell of it. I ended up eating all of it in a single sitting, and afterwards, I felt really good. So good, in fact, that I decided to head into town and pick up a few groceries. As I walked around with the shopping cart, going down the same aisles as I always did, the items I usually got held no appeal. I love bananas, but they smelled like they had been soaking in gasoline for a few days. The vegetables stank of curdled milk, and the cheese might as well have been, well, I'll let you imagine what that smelled like. The only thing that smelled good was the meat. No, It didn't smell good. It smelled divine, the way I imagine heaven smells like. I filled up my cart with hamburger, chicken breasts, pork chops, pork butt, whole turkeys, chicken legs, ribs, spiraled hams, bacon, hot dogs, and so much more. People looked at me funny as I went to pay for the items, and some even asked if I was planning on having a cookout. I am ashamed to admit it, but I snapped at those people and told them it wasn't any of their business. When I got home, I felt sick again and decided that some pork chops were in order. As I started to get everything ready, I opened the cream of mushroom and the smell that emerged from the can made me throw up in the sink. Later, I checked the expiration date and saw that it still had a few months to go. The can wasn't dented or punctured, so there was no reason for it to smell rancid. I cooked the pork chops plainly, only adding a little olive oil on the bottom of the glassware so it wouldn't stick. The wait seemed to take forever. At some point before the pork chops were done, I found myself mindlessly eating away at the raw hamburger, taking grape-sized pinches here and there. I knew it was disgusting, but I couldn't stop myself. Each bite hit the spot and scratched an itch I didn't know I had. By this time, it was after hours, but I called the general practitioner to see if there were any updates. All the while, I kept eating the raw meat. I was too embarrassed to tell them about my new eating habits, and instead sounded like an idiot when I had nothing to say other than to ask about the blood test, which I knew the results would be in sometime next week. Because of this, I could tell the person on the other line was annoyed. I spent the rest of the day eating and worrying. I must have paced a few miles before I decided to go to bed. At the time, I figured that I might be able to sleep off whatever was happening to me. And if this was not to be, it would make the day that the blood test comes in arrive faster. However, I couldn't go a few hours without food before the cravings made me wake up and rummage through my fridge. I blacked out at some point during the night and found myself outside the wooden fence, trying to bait the neighbor's cat with a raw chicken leg that I already ate half of. I was scared, paranoid that whatever bit my hand might have given me something really nasty. But I knew that worrying about it wasn't going to do me any favors, so I decided to do what I normally do to clear my head, and went for a drive. Usually this would have worked, but my stomach kept complaining. I have been eating for nearly a day straight, so I knew I wasn't hungry. What else could I do other than wait for the blood test to come back? Trying to distract myself, I decided to turn on the radio and listen to one of the 3 radio stations that worked in town. As I was fumbling with the knobs on my old beat-up truck, I turned the corner and saw a man walking across the street to get his mail. I hit the brakes as hard as I could, but it was too little too late, and he bounced off the grill and went flying through the air. Terrified, I ran out to see if there was anything I could do to help him, but when I drew close, I could see that he was all sorts of messed up. He was conscious and asked me to give him a ride to the hospital because he would not be able to afford the bill for an ambulance. However, that was when I noticed that the femur was sticking out of his leg. I licked my lips, and before I knew it, I started biting and eating around the bone as the man screamed, and in his condition he was unable to get away or fight me off. I don't know how much time passed, but at some point, I became aware that people were starting to gather. All of them were too shocked to do anything but stare, embarrassed and terrified. I ran to the truck and drove off. It wasn't like I could go anywhere. Since Gray Hill is a small town, most of the onlookers knew who I was. So I did the only thing I could think of and went home. There is so much more I want to say, but I don't have much time. The sirens are getting louder. I'm sorry.